You're listening to the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse at bellydancegeek.com.
Hi, everybody. This is Nadira Jamal, and welcome to episode 12 of the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse. The Clubhouse is a place where dance geeks can get together and geek out on all those things that are hard to get in classes and on DVDs. In general, it's really easy to get information on the what. If you want to learn moves or choreography, almost any class or DVD can help you with that. But it's a lot harder to get information on the why, with things like musicality, culture, and also on the how, stagecraft, professionalism, business, and so on. So here in the Clubhouse, I'm going to interview a different guest expert every month on a different topic related to the why and the how. And we'll always have time for question and answer so you can geek out too. So if you think that knowledge and creativity go together like chocolate and peanut butter, you are in the right place. My guest today is Alia Thabit. She's an Arab American and a Vermont juried artist, and Alia specializes in performance, composition, and live music improvisation. As an instructor, she emphasizes creativity and self-expression grounded in traditional Oriental dance values. Alia trained in New York City with Ibrahim Farah, Dunya McPherson, and Elena Limpini, and she continues her study with international artists and dance adventures in Lebanon, Palestine, Brazil, and Egypt. Alia has received grants in Vermont and New Hampshire, appeared off-Broadway, and on radio and television. She's danced on 3 continents, in 6 countries, and 15 states, produced myriad shows, directed a dance company, presented seminars, and performed internationally with world-class musicians. If you'd like to check her out, you can visit aliathabit.com, spelled AliaThabit.com. So let's jump right in. Thank you so much for coming, Alia.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So our topic for tonight is 3 things that you can put in a dance besides steps. And so the first question that jumps to mind is, how can you have a dance without steps? Isn't that the whole point of the dance?
Dance is about communication and expression. So steps kind of come afterwards. Initially, when people were moved to move, there wouldn't have been any steps. In the same way that before we had language, speech was probably just, grunts and screams. Dance was probably pretty much like flailing around. And over time, it coalesced and became stylized into specific steps. But the impulse to convey feeling is the precursor to steps. So when you are expressing your feeling to music, that's dance.
Gotcha. Now, when most of us approach creating a dance, we usually start from the steps. So what do you think is more important than the steps themselves?
I think that what you want to say with the dance is more important than the steps itself. There's a sort of a classic truism, particularly about belly dance, that, no one has anything to say in this dance until they're 40 years old. And so you see that the important part is having something to say. I'm going to say the Arab world, but I'm also including Turkey and Iraq and all the other countries where our dance is done. The technique, and steps would come under the rubric of technique, is the servant of expression. It's what you feel in the moment that's important to convey. The technique is there just to give you a framework to express your feeling.
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something that I've observed in the Western belly dance community, is everybody is so focused on the technique that it sometimes turns into a little bit of a competition, and all this other great stuff falls by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think we see that more and more, and part of that is because I think that part of that has to do with people who come to this dance from Western dance training, where the values are much more focused on technique, stylization, and like technical perfection, and the having something personal to say is less of a focus and less of a value.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've actually had that on the brain recently. You know, it strikes me that one of the biggest differences in belly dance or Oriental dance and most Western dance forms is who's doing the creating. You know, if you're a ballerina or even a jazz dancer, usually your job is to execute someone else's idea.
Exactly.
So the stronger your technique, the better you are at your job. Whereas for us, we really need to have that thing to say first and foremost.
Even if you are doing somebody else's dance, I mean, actors do other people's plays, singers sing other people's songs all the time, but even so, they bring their own special interpretation to that material. So even if you're in a company, for example, and you're performing the director's choreography, you can still bring your own interpretation to it. But that really, and that thing that you want to say, what you want to do with that part is what makes it your own and what gives the whole thing life. If you're just like 3 left, 2 right, and then a spin, it's pretty flat.
Gotcha. All right. So you promised us 3 things that we can do with our dance besides steps. Can you give us a quick overview of what those 3 things are before we jump into more detail?
The first and most basic is emotional content, particularly in, and I'm going to use the term Oriental to cover, even though it's kind of an old style term, it covers a lot of the lands of the dance, more than saying Arabic or Turkish or whatever, because there are so many different cultures that dance this dance. So in that world, the music is already thought to contain a lot of emotional content because the musicians are playing what they feel. And even the scales, which are called makam or makamat, even the scales are considered to have very specific emotional content. So the music already has this emotional material in it. And when we allow ourselves to feel the emotional feelings of the music, we have that. So that's completely basic and built into the music. After that, we come to conceptual content, like a point that we actually might want to make with our dance. Love sucks, for example. Love is great. You know, there's a lot of conceptual content in the song. If you're dancing a song that you know, it might already have content. It has poetry, it has language in it. So you might take something from that, or you might just have something that you feel from the music. You know, I'm done with my ex, or I have a new love in my life. Anything, any point that you want to make in your dance, anything that you want to express can be conceptual content. Maybe you want to just make the audience cry, or maybe you want to make them feel happy. That's conceptual content. The third thing is narrative content. Your persona as a dancer. Who is dancing in what setting and why? And you can get really detailed if you want in that, but it can also be very, very basic and general. But who's dancing in what setting and why?
Gotcha.
And those are the 3.
So let's start with emotional content. You know, I know that when you and I were talking about this before the call, we talked a little bit about emotional timbres. And I actually don't realize if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Do you know?
Yeah, it is. It's timbre. And a timbre is, it's like a vibration. It's like a quality of tone or a color of the tone. Like in the classical Arabic takht, where you have maybe 5 instruments, they're all playing together, but each instrument has a distinct, different sound. So it's easy to tell the differences. It's easy to tell who's playing what because the sounds of the instrument are so different. In the same way, the emotional qualities in the music, they're like almost like colors in the music. when a musician plays a taksim, for example, and he or she travels between several different maqams or maqamat, and each of those has its own emotional color, and then the musician is bringing their own emotional color to what they're playing. As a dancer, you have to just let your body experience them, and then let that, like it comes in through your ears and even your skin, and it comes out through your expression.
I love the visual of coming in through your skin. I've got to write that down. Hang on, everybody. So, why are these so important to dancers?
They're important to dancers because what we do as dancers, the sort of the classic thing that people say is, oh, the dancer makes the music visible. But the dancer is also showing the audience what they feel from the music. And the feelings are those emotional timbres. They also, of course, have to do with the speed and the force and all the other dynamics of the music that's being played, the pitch, the volume. All of those things influence your movement. The thing that we have in this dance that is unlike everything else is micro-movement. Most dance forms, ballet is a really extreme example. The moves are highly stylized. So when you do whatever kind of turn in ballet, I avoided that being trained in ballet, but you do a specific turn, that move has a name. It's had the same name for like 100 years or more, and your arm has to be exactly here and your elbow at exactly this angle and exactly this far from your body, and you're going to do that thing exactly the same every single time. It's, solid. It doesn't change its shape. It's always the same, and that's what's valued. In Oriental dance, what's valued is the oozy quality that we have. We can do it so small or so big or more on this side or more on that side because the music has those same qualities. So the movement of the dance has evolved along with the music so that they have the same qualities, because the musicians are always making decisions like, oh, this note will be a little sharper, or this note will be a little flatter, or I'll hold it longer or shorter, or make it louder or softer, because they're always coloring what they play with their feeling in the moment. So the dancer wants to express that, and in addition to expressing what they get from the music, they're also expressing their own feelings that the music brings out in them. So it's a collaboration.
Gotcha.
I hope I'm actually answering your questions. I get going off on these things.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Going off is good. We like this. We're geeks. So, we can see that these are definitely in the music, but how do you recommend that dancers go about interpreting these timbres?
You express them with every fiber of your being. So you feel a sense of joy, your whole body takes on that expression. And you can study it in yourself so that you can build it into other things later, especially when you're doing theatrical pieces. But what you feel from the music, you let your entire body express it. So the joy is on your face, the joy is in the carriage of your head and neck and shoulders and chest and everything, and your entire body expresses that joy. And the same when you get to the sorrow, your entire body is expressing the sorrow. Now you're a performer and you're on stage, so you're not going to unless it's a specific kind of theatrical presentation, you're not necessarily going to crumple in a ball. I recall a conversation with Safa Farid and Rakia Hassan and Raza Sharif, and but the dancer has to always be happy. You can't be sad on stage. And we kind of had to dig around that a little bit. And it was like, well, you can't be sad on stage, but you can portray sadness on stage, because the character of the song or the color of the music contains that, but you can't go up there and mope around because, you know, you had a crappy day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the glorious sadness as opposed to the man, this has been a tough day.
Yeah, it's in the script, that's fine, but the show, you know, you're not up there like moaning and crying because you had a crappy day. You're up there making everybody happy because that's your job.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, when we focus on the emotional content, that's a very different thing from focusing on the moves. So I know that one thing that you and I have talked about is the idea of freeing yourself from the moves. So how does that work exactly?
As one develops as a dancer, there's not that many moves in this dance, right? Let's face it. There's, you know, maybe, and if you want to get really fancy about it, I think there's like 23 different moves for Takasim, and there's not too many more other moves. You have your really super basic dance vocabulary. And that super basic dance, and we've done a lot of other stuff, and like we collect all these moves because, you know, we have to be like fancy and, you know, provide interest and stuff like that. The interest for the audience is in having a genuine emotional experience. That's what's really interesting. I mean, it's nice to see a spectacle, that's great. But what people really remember is how they feel, how, you know, what they shared with you. And in particular, a live performance, and here you are and you're with the audience, and they can actually feel what you're giving to them. And your performance is a gift for the audience. You don't go out to the audience so that you can get from them, oh, isn't she pretty, and, you know, or isn't he handsome, and isn't that dancer's technique really superb? You know, that's great. But that's the baseline of the package, that you have accomplishment, you have technical accomplishment, and you have skill. You know, that's why you're there, because you're skilled. But what you're doing is bringing a gift to the audience. You're giving them a space out of their everyday lives, and you're bringing them a sense of joy. And, you know, the dancer's job is to break the ice and make the party. No matter what context you're dancing in, that's still your job. Even if you're presenting this really tragic theatrical thing, you're still like, you know, you're providing an alternate space for people. So bring me back to the original question for a second, because I totally lost myself there.
How do we free ourselves from the moves was the crux of it.
Right. So when you're responding, you have this like relatively limited basic vocabulary. It's not important what move you're doing. It's important what you're expressing about the feeling. You can trust your body to move. Your body will choose the moves for you. So you don't have to be like, oh crap, I already did 5 hip drops, now what am I going to do? You are busy engaging with the music, and when your engagement with the music is complete, your body is taking care of the moves. Everyone has had that, or most people have had that experience, like you finish your show and you're like, wow, you don't even know what you did. You have no memory of what you actually did. All you remember is how you felt. That's the good kind of show, especially if people applaud. Because you want to be lost
into the moment.
Yeah, not lost in the music, but engaged fully, so that the I part, the ego worrying, scurrying mind part is, not in the front. You're not really having to deal with that. And your body will do its own job and move. It will carry you. So you don't have to make decisions about the moves, you just let your body do that. Because once you've got the moves inside your body will take care of you. It has a lot more intelligence than we normally give credit. We tend to try to control everything our bodies do, but really the body is very, very, very intelligent and a lot more on top of things. I mean, who's fallen and like they're been surprised because their body rolled them safely, or like bounce them right back up again, your body knows what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? It's
Absolutely.
kind of a weird thing to say.
No, actually, I'm absolutely on the same page with you. If anybody who's listening is familiar with my work on improv, my big thing is that the whole first layer of improvisation is making friends with your safety moves, right? Whatever it is that your body likes to present to you as an option is your best friend. Mm-hmm. And instead of trying to fight that and saying, no, I have to do the interesting thing or the thing that I think is cool, you work with what it gives you, and then you can start sinking into these layers. So I love
yes.
to approach it from the direction of emotion because it's all the same thing.
Yes.
Yay! Cool. Well, I think this is a great time to move on to conceptual content. But was there anything else you wanted to say about emotional content before we do?
Nope. I think we're good.
Okay. Let's jump in. So you talked about conceptual content as having a point to your dance. So how does a dance have a point? What does that mean to you?
I've tended to do this for quite a long time, and sometimes it's a really simple point, like I'm going to say goodbye to this. I'm going to say goodbye to this relationship that's over, and I made my dance, and so that was my like I had an intention. You know, so it made there was a functional quality to the dance because I'm saying goodbye. So that feeling, everything that I did was colored by that feeling and that intention, and that affected the quality, probably the choice of the movement and the quality of the movement itself. So it made it a little more formal and a little more dramatic, and there was tinges of nostalgia and a certain amount of sorrow, and then also this newness and looking forward. So it gave it a sort of a narrative arc without having it be specific, like now I'm doing this and now I'm doing that. It had a sort of overall arc, like an emotional trajectory. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then and you can have like anything in there. I tend to. I had a dance. It was about forbidden love, and my friend was like grousing about it. She said, no. Why can't you just have the dance be about happiness? I said, okay, fine. So that night I said, all right, this time it's about joy and love. And so I danced it that way. It was completely different. It was a completely different dance to the exact same song. Because the intention and the point that I wanted to convey was different.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about that.
To talk over.
Oh no, I always want to hear what you have to say. But the impression I'm getting is that when you have a point, it doesn't just direct your expression, but in a lot of ways it will also affect your choices. Has that been your experience?
Yes, it does affect your choices, but in a very organic way, because it's usually not choices like, what am I going to do next? Conscious choices. They're body choices. Mm-hmm. Improvisation for me is part of the goal is to let the body lead. And, I put in, so say the body is a container. And into the container I put the intentions that I have for the dance. And then, mix it up and let it go. And every so often, improvisation is really special because it's not going to be the same every time. So sometimes you're going to win big. It's kind of like playing a slot machine, except the odds are better. Because the better your skills are, the higher a likelihood that you're going to, get whatever 3 cherries. But you put in all this stuff, and then you go, okay, let's see what happens. And sometimes really super great things happen, and sometimes it's not so great. And again, the more you practice and the better your skills are, the higher the percentage of times that you're going to be okay. Sometimes it's not great. Once in a while it's probably pretty awful. I haven't had a really, really awful show in a while, but I've had shows that felt pretty horrible, over the course of my time. But you learn a lot, you take a risk, and the audience takes a risk with you. So the audience is getting this incredible, once-in-a-lifetime, never-to-be-repeated, unique experience. And that's what the music is supposed to be like. Those musicians pride themselves on never playing a song the same way twice. So even if you know the song, the way the song is tonight, even if they play the same notes, which they don't, the feeling is different. So your feeling is different, so the dance is different. When you have recorded music, obviously it's the same every time, every time, every time. And a lot of these techniques are extremely useful with recorded music, because otherwise you can kind of get into a rut because it's the same every time. So you can mix it up and challenge yourself by choosing different things. There's a story about the actor Sir Richard Burton that might be apocryphal. He's playing Falstaff, and he has this big scene with a big speech, and he's backstage and he's getting ready, and he says to the people around him, "I think tonight I'm going to make them cry." And he goes out and he does his speech, and the whole audience is in tears. And, the next night or the next week or whatever, he's getting ready. He's like, "I think tonight I'm going to make them laugh." And he goes out, same speech, same actor, same play, same speech. The audience is rolling in the aisles. It's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. So you have the same song, but you can change up the content of your interpretation of the song. It keeps it fresh for you. It keeps it fresh for the audience.
Mm-hmm. I have a song on my pre-show playlist that I listen to when I'm getting ready for a show. It's by a big band guy called Jimmy Lunciford, and it's called "Tain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It."
Mm-hmm.
And I find it helpful to listen to before the show, specifically because it helps get me out of the what and into the what do I want to accomplish? How do I want to be?
Exactly. Yes.
I love it.
And that's cool. The same thing. It's not the moves. What moves you do are not important. What you put in the moves is what's important.
So we talked a little bit about how the band's interpretation can make a difference. How does the audience affect the point?
How does the audience
make a difference in your conceptual
How does the
content?
audience make a difference to the dancer?
Yeah.
There's the obvious things, like if the audience is cold, you have to work harder. And even then, you might not have to work harder. You might have to work smarter. And if the audience is warm, of course, that's really great. I've done shows where the audience, like all the audience had ever seen before was, American tribal style. And the person who brought me in was like, "I love the emotional stuff you do. Do something that's really emotional." So I'm flailing around on stage, and the audience is like, "The hell is she doing?" I get that a lot. And they're just like, nobody knew they didn't have a frame of reference for what I was doing. So they didn't really know how to take it. And that's a little harder, when the audience is just kind of staring at you in disbelief, than when they understand and appreciate what you're doing. So there are like very obvious levels of how the audience affects you. And sometimes, and it took me a while to discover this, sometimes you get a really bad feeling from the audience because they're really interested in what you're doing. They're like watching really intently, but to you're not getting warm fuzzies, because they're like staring hard and maybe even frowning a little bit, but really they're just very, very interested in what you're doing. But it can really like pull you up short. I have things that I use to help me through moments like that. I do like transmutation of poison, you know, where I'll just like be pretty still in my dance and breathe in the what feels to me like negative energy, and then like exhale nectar and you know, sort of like cleanse, like when you sage a space, you know, and basically like cleansing the audience, and part of it is for me and part of it is for them, and things like that help me to get through those kinds of things. Dancers are often a crappy audience because they are just watching you thinking, what is she doing? How could I do that? Is that her is her weight on the left foot there? What is that costume made of? You know, so they're not enjoying the dance. They're not out there enjoying the dance. And then there's a whole class of audience in the Arab world called the Samiya, which is the educated listeners, you know, and they're out there, and their job is to make the evening go well, you know. So they're like encouraging the musicians and, oh, yeah, Gamil. And they consider the audience as part of the experience and also has responsibility for the loveliness of the experience, because everybody's goal is to attain a state of musical ecstasy, tarab, or musical ecstasy. But Western audiences don't necessarily understand that. So, like, are those mirrors on her belt? Can you see? So they're all squinting at you, you know.
Yeah, I have a similar technique to the transmutation of poisons idea, and that's that I like to make up stories about why people are scowling, right? It's you know, the calamari that they ordered 10 minutes ago was just kind of bad, and they're really unhappy with that. Or, you know, so anything that you can do to kind of reframe it.
Yeah, and you know what? And you can heal people when that's happening, and you can make up that story, because, again, the story is just a framework for the feeling. So it doesn't really matter whether the story is true or not, or the details, but you can, like, have that, and then you can send extra love to them, you know, and sort of, you know, heal the pain of their calamari. And, you know, bring them more closely into the show with you.
Yeah. It's kind of related to something my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, and that's that when all things are equal, choose the thing that hurts you the least, right? If you don't actually know what's going on, assume that everybody has good intentions.
Yes.
Because you're the only one affected by your assumptions, so you may as well pick something that works for you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have been, like, just through negative experiences in our own pasts, we take responsibility for everybody else's, like, crappy attitude. Like, oh, my God, what did I do? Well, you didn't do anything. They're just in a crappy mood, and, you know, you happened to walk by, so they gave you a nasty look. We need to, like, separate ourselves from everybody else's crap.
That makes such a big difference, especially if we bring our own crap enough.
So the audience makes the difference because their mood might not be, you know, for whatever reason, might not match your mood, and you just have to love them more when that happens. If there's a feeling of negative energy, you just basically have to love them more and put more love, not try harder, but love more.
That's a really important distinction. Okay. So I think I'm ready to move on to the third point, but before we do, is there anything else that you want to talk about conceptual content?
No, I mean, it can be anything. It can literally be anything.
Okay.
Everyone is very, very free. This is a really elastic, flexible dance form, and you can have a lot of freedom with those aspects of it. The audience doesn't have to know anything about your content. They'll feel the content is there without knowing what it is. And the beauty of art is that they will interpret it in their own way. It's like the story of the Buddha. If the Buddha speaks one word and 500 people are listening, all 500 questions will be answered. You know, your art is like that.
I always just talked about my mom, but I need to do it again. So she's a poet, actually kind of a medium, just getting to be famous one. And the thing that she says that she likes about poetry is that the poet and the reader meet in the meaning space.
Yes.
So the poet has an intention, and the reader has what they hear in it. and they're both true. And the overlap between those things is doubly true. And that's
Yes.
just such a cool concept. Especially when you come out of like a literary criticism background and you kind of go through and say, well, the author's intent was clearly blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing clear about it. And it doesn't have to be. It's the beauty of how many facets you can pull out of this thing.
Art is loaves and fishes. I mean, you can just keep looking and there's still more, and every time you look there's more, and there's always something else. And, you know, you come back to something 10 years later and you're like, oh my God, I never knew that was in there, and yet it was there the whole time. So, you know, dance is an art, and it has all of those qualities. The learning curve never flattens, and the depth and richness. This is a simple little folk dance, you know, but the depth and richness of this dance is unparalleled. That's how you know it's art.
Okay. Well, moving on to your third point, narrative content. I know a lot of us are used to thinking about narrative content as kind of a Western dance concept, right? We look at ballet and we say, this is about putting on a 3-hour play that's done in dance, and belly dance is not. You know, we see Oriental dance is very abstract. Well, what do you think about that?
I think a couple of things about that. Yes, it's true that the dance itself is abstract. It's not like hula, for example, where, you know, moves are representative of ideas. You know, this is the palm trees waving in the breeze. We don't have that kind of thing. So the moves themselves are empty vessels, and that's why we get to fill them with all of this stuff. The narrative content can go from the very, very general to the very, very specific. A. B. Songs often have narrative content. The song has a character, the song has a story, the song has this, the song has that. So you have that as a precedent that there's stuff in the song. A lot of songs don't have any. You know, they're like, woohoo, you know, it's good to have a drink, and that's like the main content of the song. But some songs are poetry, you know, and they have a lot of really super beautiful, elegant stuff that you can take things from. So you have that. Nobody is opposed to that. In the Arab world, they have lots of musicals, and they like stories and stuff like that. Tons and tons of movies with dance scenes in them, and the dance scenes have narrative content in them, like Tamra Henna, you know, and she's dancing and she sees the guy and it's like, uh-oh, they do it anyways. So if they do it, even if they got it from the West, it's like, it's okay, we can do it. It's just fine. If you're dancing to live music and you're doing a classic 5-part routine to live music, you might or might not, depending on how well connected you are with the band and like what kind of conversation with them, you might or might not do this. But you're going to have so much extra content in the live music that you might not need to fill it with these other concepts. Does that make sense? There's already a lot of stuff in live music for you to play with. But if the music is, these concepts are for the dancer to do what they want. You can make a dance that is like a total story dance. It's got, you know, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and this happens. That's fine. We have a lot of theatrical dance. It's entirely legitimate. You can have that down to, in your head, I had a dance, and it was, the character of this dance is the wife of the Sultan. She's processing with the rest of the household into this feast. Out of the corner of her eye, she catches sight of the captain of the guards with whom she is having a torrid affair. And then at that point, the music changes, and all of the rest of the dance is her, like, daydreaming about this incredibly wonderful affair, which, if it is discovered, they will both be killed. And then the music switches back at the end to the processional music, because she turns her head at one moment, and then it just like goes into this whole like rhapsodic thing, and she turns her head back, and she keeps walking forward. So I have the whole who's the character, what is happening, what is the backstory in there, but none of that is clear to the audience. It's clear that there's a break, and that one, people came to me, this was in Canada where they have like a lot of very busy, very specific choreography at that time, and I was taking a class up there because it was like cross-training for me, and like all these girls from the class came over and said, what was your dance about? We know your dance was about something. What was it about? And I said, well, it was about forbidden love. And they're like, we knew it. We knew it. So for them, it was like, oh, my God, a dance can be about something, because they didn't really have so much of that in, that particular, at that time. It's probably different now, but at that time, they didn't have so much of that. So that's just a very simple thing. Here's this character. The character is in this context. The character is just broken up with a lover, or the character has just gotten a new lover, or the character is, has lost something, has gained something. You don't even have to know what the something is. The something can be, every dancer can do the same dance, and the something that they've lost can be different for them. But, you're conveying loss. You're conveying looking forward. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting take on narrative content because, I keep going back to the ballet comparison because that's what Westerners are so used to.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, a ballet is successful if it communicates the plot line. Mm-hmm. It's not the only thing that's going on there, but if you can't figure out what happened, they've failed in their job. And it seems like that's not the purpose of the narrative content in the way that you're describing it.
You can have a dance like that. I mean, you can have a dance that has a really, an absolutely specific storyline, and that's fine. And again, people don't even have to know what the storyline is, because every story has, a sequence of emotional stages.
Mm-hmm.
You go from any story. In fact, I was reading a book about writing plays, and it's like the character is going to go from A to B. Well, they can't go from A to Z unless they go through all of those stages, but they can go A, B, C, D maybe. So there's a sequence, there's an arc, an emotional arc, and you can hit each of those stages, and you're going to have it's going to be satisfying because it has closure, it has an arc, and it has closure. Or it can be a total story. I have one dance that's, I was doing a lot of research about Medea, and I was listening to a song that I really wanted to make something with because I really loved the song. And I'm walking down the street listening to the song for the 500th time because I just put it on auto replay on my MP3 player and put my earphones in. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I can fit the entire myth of Medea into this song. From, the minute she meets Jason all the way to, burning, what's her name, King Creon's daughter there. She sends the coat to burn Jason's new girlfriend into little smithereens. All of that fits into there is a space in this song for every element of that myth. So that had a story, but it wasn't necessarily, and I named it Medea, but it wasn't necessarily an totally explicit story.
Mm-hmm.
And, the comment that dance actually got mostly was, wow, that was really demented.
That sounds perfect for the intention, though.
I know. Yeah, so I was really clear, and I didn't even set most of the steps for that. I mean, they kind of set themselves after a while, but what I set was this is the stage of the story. This from, this measure to this measure is this part of the story. From this measure to this measure is this part of the story. Mm-hmm. And then I just let the music dictate what I did. But I had the intentions because I knew what part of the story I was at.
So that's a completely mood-neutral approach, but you're also making very specific choices in the moment.
Yeah, and over time I found that And there was one or two places where, like, I made a decision, like, there was something in the rhythm, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do czar stuff right here because this is what's happening, and this is the music, and, like, so this would be perfect. And so, well, I'll do this. But it sort of grew itself rather than me, like, sitting there wondering, oh, my God, now what step am I going to put? I've already done this, and oh, God, I didn't have to sweat over it.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of us aren't used to approaching belly dance from a narrative sense. How would you recommend that people get started if they want to start including that kind of content?
It starts by listening to the music. It's all about the music. It's all about listening to the music. You might the other way that you could do it is know that you had something to express and then find music that gave you the feeling that you wanted to express. You could start from, I want to say this. What piece of music says this to me so that it's going to be a good piece for me to collaborate, with which to collaborate. Or, here's this piece of music, I want to do something with it, I like this piece of music, what are the feelings that I get from this? And you can chart the music, at this point I feel this, at this point I feel this, at this point I feel this. And you can grow your dance out of that sense of the things in each part of the music. I've grown dances because I knew that, oh my God, right here, this should happen. And then everything else came, like, it kind of spread outward from that one spot where this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So,
and sometimes I've had 3 or 4 stories, that would get me to this, and then pick the one that sort of went right.
Gotcha. So it sounds like this model that you're describing is very much about sinking into your music and preparing, not planning and not choreographing, but preparing. Based on getting to know your music.
I'm going to teach this course, right? And I'm going to teach this course, and it's called, How to Create Dance Art. And it starts with listening to the music and, like, understanding exactly what's happening in the music everywhere, and then finding out, like, what do you feel from this part, what do you feel from that part, thinking about what do you want to say with the piece, thinking about, is there thinking about any kind of narrative elements, thinking about stage design. So there's a lot of, like, designing, a lot of elements of designing that you can do. You never have to set moves unless you want to. Like, when it gets to this point, I'm going to fall on the floor. You can set particular points. You can just, like, you can keep going to the point where you've set everything down till the last wink. But you can stop anywhere along that trajectory. It's like each thing builds on the thing before. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you can go all the way to steps. I mean, I was really struck when I was a kid. I was watching the Olympics or something like that, or some ice skating something, and there was a guy named Robin Cousins. I haven't been able actually to find much of anything about him, but I was really enthralled by his performance. He's like rolling around on the ground on the ice. And the announcer was saying he always leaves room in his routines for improvisation.
Mm.
And I was a little kid, and I didn't understand at that time how remarkable that was in the world of, like, world-class ice dancing competitions, that you would leave space in your routine for improvisation, and how daring and courageous that was, because they're all about, like, absolute, utter perfection of everything. And maybe things are more stylized and competitive now than they were, 30, 40 years ago. I don't know. But that really struck me, that you could leave these spaces open for things to happen. You didn't have to set everything.
Gotcha. Now, one situation where you can't really set very much at all is if you've got live music. Mm-hmm. Even if you've danced with the same band 10 times and they played you the same song 10 times, it might be 2 minutes long one time and 5 minutes long the next. Mm-hmm. So how do you recommend approaching narrative content when you've got all the unknowns of live music?
It depends on the band and how well you know the band. If you don't know the band well, the first time you dance with any band, especially if you've never heard them before, like that's the exploratory dance, and you're discovering stuff about each other. But I've given bands set lists that were like, I want to start happy and then get like really moody and tragic, and then it's going to be very like searching and restless, and then, you know, a big drum solo meltdown, and then springing up like a phoenix after that, and like, you know, arriving all full of joy. And you would be surprised how many bands are like, okay, and then they play you that.
Well, I'm sure they're used to thinking of their music in emotional terms, so that makes all kinds of sense.
I would not go in like, I'm going to do Little Red Riding Hood, and you know, I'm going to tell the story of Little Red Riding Hood, personally, because I personally am much more interested to find out what happens in the moment with the live music when I have good live musicians. I'm much more interested in just allowing that to happen and seeing what we create together. You know, less interested in controlling that, except from, you know, that perspective of like, here's an emotional arc that we might explore.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I used to do improvisational comedy, so like group improv.
Oh yeah, I've taken several classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade myself.
Nice. And, you know, one thing that was really interesting to me, and one of the reasons why I was good at it, because I'm not funny at all, but I'm funny in a group. But the reason that was interesting to me is that there's this idea that the story already exists, and the narrative already exists, and your job as the troupe is to find out what it is.
Yes, you're discovering something that's already there.
Exactly.
It's like quantum physics and a million potential universes, all of which are right there, and whether you, like, your eyes look to the left or the right depends on which one you're going to go to, which one you're going to end up in next.
Exactly. And so everything that you do has to be consistent with what's happened already, but there are still choices and choices and choices. So, ooh, I love it.
Yeah, there's always doors and rooms and new things to discover and explore. It's a journey. And the audience is going to be happy to go with you on the journey.
So believe it or not, we've actually been at this for an hour.
Yeah.
So I'd love to take us into the question and answer period. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to say about narrative content or about any of your 3 points?
No, let's see what people ask, because those will be whatever we need to add.
Okay, great. Well, before we jump into questions and answers, I'd just like to ask you, so if people want to learn more from you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they could meet me and we could hang out. They could take some of my classes or subscribe to my newsletter or do, you know, any kind of things like that. They could email me or call me on the phone or whatever.
Okay, and how can people reach you to do that?
My website is aliathabit.com. The course that I'm about to teach about dance composition, which incorporates all of these principles and many, many more, is called Create Dance Art, and that's createdanceart.com. They can email me, Alia@aliathabit.com, and just say hi, or, you know, subscribe to my newsletter, or friend me on Facebook, facebook.com/Alia Thabit. Whatever, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
Now, I understand you actually travel quite a bit. You live in Vermont, but I've seen check-ins from you in New York and in California and elsewhere.
Yes, I like to get around. So I do travel, and I'm also always looking for places to crash. So if you have a sofa, I want to meet you.
Now, speaking of Create Dance Art, this is a program that I think is actually really exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's involved?
It's an online course. I'm doing it on a forum, and it's a dance composition course for improvisation or choreography, or improvisation and choreography. So you can work with the dances that you're going to do at any level. So it's not a dance class. So how well you dance or how much dance experience you have is not that important, because you're going to be doing mostly you're going to be doing design work, and not until there's 3 modules, and the 3rd module includes like setting steps and building combinations and how to do that kind of stuff. Hang on, let me kind of collect my thoughts here for a second. I've designed it so that the way the forum works and the way that you learn on the forum is that you learn the skills and repeat them many times each, so that you really get the skills. It's not like, yeah, this is what you do this, then you do this, then you do this. Okay, done? All right, bye. Like you go to a workshop, you learn a choreography, maybe you can remember it later because you did it, for one day. We're going to do these things over a long period of time and repeat each individual skill over and over again, so that then when you're finished and you get to the point where you're making your own dances, you remember the sequence of the process, because it's a system. It's like you do this, you do this, you do this, you add this, you stir in a little of that. It's like a recipe for making a dance, but it leaves a lot of space for your choices and your own flavor and things like that. That's what makes it art. The way that I think about it is a step is empty. It's like a box without a gift. And what we do in the course is gather up all these gifts and fill the steps with all of these ideas and concepts and like delicious, yummy food. And in that way, the dances become art rather than just a series of empty steps.
And this is starting in about 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, it starts on the 23rd of September.
And that's going through sometime in December?
It's December 13th.
Gotcha.
And then we're going to have a lightning round after that.
Ooh, I like that. What's that about?
We're going to spend 3 months making 4 dances each, and then at the end we're going to make an entire dance in 4 days.
Ooh. That's not, okay, now I have to sign up just to do that. Okay, so now we've got a sense of how long it is. What's the time commitment like?
I'm designing it so that you have homework 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and the homework will usually take you maybe 20 minutes, like 10 minutes to half an hour, but I'm shooting for about 20 minutes a shot, because I want people to get past the agonizing part where you're like, oh, I don't know, should I do this? It's like, I just have to do it, so I'm just going to put something here, because really that's enough.
Gotcha. So people need to be able to commit daily time, but it's not a huge drain on your day.
Yeah, I don't want it to be a huge drain on people's day. It is daily. I did previously the 90-day dance party challenge where people committed to doing 20 minutes of unstructured improvisation every day, and they did it every day for 90 days. And so this is actually less, because it's about the same amount of time. I'm shooting for 20 minutes, because 20 minutes is a really good amount of time for skills development. You do something for 20 minutes, that's enough. You've done a really good job. And your brain chemistry changes over the course of 20 minutes, and a lot of things happen in the body in the space of 20 minutes. It doesn't happen in 10 minutes, it doesn't happen in 15, it happens in 20. So it's a good amount of time. And the more you have the habit of showing up on the forum and doing the work every day, the faster you develop the skills and the more deeply embedded the skills become, and the more committed you have. You have a small group to work with, and everybody is doing the work together, and it's not that big of a hardship. You take a half an hour, you show up, you do your work, and say hey to everyone in your group, and wow, you did really great on that, and then you come back the next day and you do it again.
Gotcha. And I understand you have something a little bit special for Clubhouse listeners.
I do have something special for Clubhouse listeners. I have a special deal for you. The normal price of this class is $245, because and it's worth it. It's like $20 a week. If you went to a weekend workshop, it would cost you at least $200, $250, and then you'd have to factor in your travel expenses, your hotel expenses, your food expenses. Your weekend workshop, you're going to learn a couple of choreographies and maybe some new steps. That thing's going to cost you like $600. This was, I designed this to be $245. It's 3 months long, and you get a process that you can use to make your own dances that are uniquely you and totally special forever to any music, any time, anything. So I was like, well, that's a pretty good deal. I would like this. I consider this to be at about the level of a 3-credit college course, which would cost a whole lot more than that if you actually went to a school and paid for that.
I did the math actually on this, and it's actually less than it would cost to take my intermediate class over the same time period. So this is very, very reasonable for what you're getting.
Yeah, this is the first time I've done this course, so I'm pricing it at lower than what I would normally price it. I think this is probably a $300 course, maybe more. So, but I'm experimenting. So, but for you guys, it's $200. So you get the whole course, the whole super duper forum, everything. And I've designed this with I've designed everything using a lot of very current research in skills acquisition. I've made everything as rich and cool from every aspect as possible. You're not just getting information, you're actually developing the skills to do it yourself later on with confidence and ease.
So if people want to take advantage of this special that you've got, where can they do that?
They can go to, I made a special page for you. It's aliathabit.com/blog/geeks.
Okay, so make sure that you sign up there. So I know Alia mentioned createdanceart.com earlier. That's the public page, so don't sign up there if you want the good price. Go to aliathabit.com/blog/geeks. And how much time do people have to do that? When is that going to expire?
What do you think is good? There's also an installment plan. You can do 3 installments of $70 if you want to.
Okay. Well, I would say that a deadline would be good because I'm looking at the page and I'm seeing that almost 2/3 of the spots have already sold out.
There's 14 seats left.
Okay, so maybe we should give them a time limit, maybe a week?
A week is fine, or, if it's all gone at the, before a week is up, it's all gone because there's 35 and that's it. But yeah,
okay, there are only 14 left, so everybody, if you're listening, grab it now, but that will expire on Tuesday, September 17th, if there are still spots available, but no guarantees.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
So this page will disappear at midnight on Tuesday the 17th.
All right. Well, that's just for you guys, so that's available.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good time for Q&A. So for those of you who are on the webcast, if you have any questions, you can type them in on the box at left. And just be sure to put your name in the box, too, so that I know who's asking. And those of you who are on the phone or on Skype, you can press *2 to raise your hand, and I can unmute you. If you're on the phone, that's *2 on your telephone. And if you're on Skype, that's *2 on your keypad, not on the keyboard. So it looks like we've got a caller from Toronto. I'm going to unmute you. Hi there.
Hello?
Hi, who am I speaking to?
Hi, this is Kalina.
Hi, Kalina.
Hi.
Hi, Alia and Nadira. How are you both?
Great.
Really well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. My question is, I understand, not to think about the move so much when you're improvising, but how do you get comfortable enough to completely lose yourself in the music?
Practice. When you practice, and I don't know about that term, lose yourself, but to become completely engaged in the music, you practice that. And that was the previous program that I did over the last year, which was the Dance Party Challenge. That was the purpose of that, where for 20 minutes, what you practiced was becoming engaged in the music and letting go of thoughts, and it's based on dance meditation. And because we practice moves, but we forget to practice being alive and eternal and enmeshed in the music. So we have to practice that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much.
20 minutes at a time. Take 20 minutes and just let your body move however it wants. And some of it won't be pretty, but breathe in time with the music. Start with an exhale. Exhale on the one. So it's exhale, 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 and let your body do whatever the hell it wants.
Cool. Great. I'll try that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know that question was for Alia, but I want to add a follow-on to that, and that in order to let your body do what it wants, you have to accept whatever comes. So that was kind of tying into my don't try and fight your safety moves concept earlier, but that was another thing that I really got out of improvisational comedy, is if somebody says, hey, there's a parrot on your shoulder, you don't say, no, there isn't. That's a dog. You have to just accept whatever is happening in your body. And that's not an easy thing to accept because we kind of want to find the right move and the perfect move.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step. Alia, did I just
great.
step on your toes?
Yeah.
It's about trusting your body. And the comedy improv school that I went to has a big sign up, and the big sign says, don't think. And breathing in time with the music helps to short-circuit that thinking and anxiety process and focusing on the exhale.
Okay. That sounds really good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me know how it turns out.
I will.
Thanks.
And thanks for the question, Kalina. Okay. If anybody else would like to ask a question, you can press *2 to raise your hand or type that in the question box if you're on the webcast. Let's see if we've got any questions there yet. Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody's asked a question yet. So I know there's a time delay on the webcast, so we're going to wait a little bit. Okay, we have got a question from Candace. Candace, I'm going to unmute you. Hi there.
Hi there, how are you?
Great,
Candace.
how are you? It's good to hear your voice.
Good, good. It's awesome to be listening to you guys again. It's really, really informative. Thank you very much. I had a question about, I do a lot of improv, obviously, in the restaurants and stuff like that here in New Zealand, and I was wondering if you can help me with a little thing that I've sort of been going through. I got to a point where people were really enjoying my performances and commented about how, I looked so relaxed and comfortable in my movements. And then I went on this journey of improving my technique and focusing on cleaner movements and, just a better quality of movement. And it seems that I've kind of now gone a little bit away from being a genuine performer. I don't know if that makes sense, but so my technique is a lot better, but I feel like I've lost a little bit of the joy and the simplicity of the performance and engaging with it, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if you have any advice for me on that.
My first inclination is essentially the same advice as for the last caller, which is you want to practice your technique, but you also want to practice your ability to just enjoy yourself in the moment. Okay. So putting on like happy music and putting yourself in that, you can use that persona and scenario thing, and you can place yourself in a place where, you are just expressing joy and you're radiantly happy, and you actually practice that. When we work on our technique, we tend to, there's Daniel Kahneman has done a lot of research on the way people think, and his book is called Thinking Fast and Slow, and he talks about System 1 and System 2. And System 2 is the really heavy thinking part where you're like figuring things out and, actually your brain is actually working. And System 1 is sort of like autopilot, intuitive kind of thing. System 2, that heavy thinking part, can be engaged just by frowning. And you know how when you're in class, you're kind of like squinting at yourself in the mirror and like focusing down and working really hard? So they did experiments where, for example, they would make people hold a pencil in their teeth, which kind of forced your face into a smiley. And people couldn't think as hard when they did that.
That's a good technique I'll try with my students.
Conversely, if they gave people stuff that was like where the Xerox was of crappy quality, so they had to like squint to look at the Xerox, they worked harder on the problems that were listed in the Xerox than they did if the Xerox was nice and clean and easy to read. So you can do a lot just with how you set your face. And I know that we're all used to like the horrible plastic smile that, you know, everyone's been, no, you must smile all the time. But there's a lot to be said for, you know, I call it like body mapping, where you take notes on how you hold your body and your face in different emotional states so that you can put your body and your face into that state by recreating it from memory.
Okay, thank you. So the body mapping, can you just maybe elaborate a little more on that? I'm not 100% sure.
So how do you hold your body and your face when you're in a state of improvisational joy? And you find that, you know, you allow your body to go into that framework and your face to go into that framework and the joy that shows on your face and that shows in your body. And then when you go out to dance, you put yourself in that shape. Like you make that shape with your body and your face. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess it's just I'll have to do some exploration to figure that out, which is what you were talking about, I guess, with practicing your improv so that you can find that place where you feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, and you can set that as like a challenge for yourself in your improvisational practice to stay in that mode.
Okay.
And again, the whole breathing in time with the music is everything, because when we concentrate, we kind of tend to breathe very little and hold our breath. So breathing in time with the music, either breathing rhythmically or breathing in like little stops. It's hard to like say it. It's easier to show it. Where, you know, here's the measure of the music is 8 counts. So your inhale is like, and your exhale is. Does that make sense over the phone?
Yes, it does. It does.
Breathing with the music is like, and slow movement is also a cure for everything, but breathing with the music is one of those things that's like a cure for everything.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Again, I'd like to know how it works out for you.
Thanks. I will.
Thanks.
That was a great question, Candace. And actually, if it's okay, I'd like to elaborate on one thing Alia said. So about body mapping, about putting yourself physically in the shapes that you make when you feel a certain way. I think this might have been clear from what Alia said, but just to make it crystal clear, there's actually a lot of research that shows that when you physically arrange your body and your face in those spaces, you authentically start to feel those things. So it's not just about putting on a mask for the audience. It's about creating that emotional response in yourself. So if you're afraid of plastic smiles, don't worry, because it's totally different.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to check the webcast, but again, if anybody wants to ask a question, you can press *2 to raise your hand. All right. We've got a couple of notes on the webcast. So Anthea in Fredericksburg says, no questions, but enjoyed listening so much. I think this was my favorite so far. Thanks, Anthea.
Oh, thanks.
And then Joy says, no question. I just want to say thank you in capital letters for sharing this. So much of what you've said has resonated with me. I teach theatrical belly dance here in Portland, Maine, and may make this podcast required listening for my students.
Cool.
Thank you to both of you for doing this. So thank you both, Joy and Anthea. Those are awesome comments.
Yeah, thanks for being there and listening.
Okay. So again, if anybody has any questions, you can press *2 on your phone or your Skype keypad, or you can type those in on the webcast. So last call. And while we're waiting, I'd just like to ask Alia. This is the thing I like to ask all of my guests. If our listeners take away one thing from this call, what would you want that to be?
I'm torn, actually, between listening to the music and confidence. Because you have to listen to the music to find the things. The music is buried treasure. The music is like a treasure map. And when you listen to the music, you find all these things that are in it. And then you have material to express. Listening deeply to the music allows you to find material to express. But the other thing is confidence, that it's all these things are okay. Like, you don't have to, be so scared or worry about, oh my God, what am I going to do? Just hey, it's okay. It's just a dance. Go have a good time. Just enjoy the music, and that all by itself is worth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing for the audience is the dancer having a good time. The audience might not know that's the most important thing, but it is. Because if you're having a good time and you're expressing that and sharing that with them, they're going to have a good time too.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I don't see any hands raised, and I don't see any last-minute questions, so I think that is a great place to end today. So thank you so much, Alia. This has been such good stuff.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here.
And thank you, everybody who's here, and thank you also those of you who are listening after the fact. So this is the end of our call, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. We've got a private Facebook group just for Clubhouse listeners, and I'll send out an email shortly which will have an invitation to that group so we can continue the conversation and keep talking about all this good stuff there. In that email, I'll also include a link to the call recording if you want to listen another couple of times. And I'm also going to ask you for your feedback. The Clubhouse is something that I organize, but it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. So I want to know if you have any ideas for topics that you'd like to learn more about, speakers that you'd like to hear from, or any other way that I can improve the Clubhouse and make it more useful to you. So once I send that out, please do reply. I'd love to see your suggestions. The next call has not been scheduled, but that will happen in the 3rd or 4th week of October. Usually I like to do these in the 2nd week, but I'm going to be in Miami for a fabulous vacation, so I'm going to be out of touch. And my last point is that the Clubhouse is the come-on-in kind of Clubhouse, not the no boys allowed kind. So if you know anybody who would enjoy this kind of stuff, please invite them to join us. We can do that at bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse. And until next time, happy dancing. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yay. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Nadira, for having me. It was really a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening. For more geek-tacular resources, visit bellydancegeek.com.